Right, I just want to talk about L.A Noire for a little bit. I was planning on doing a review, but when the game came out on that weekend, I got busy. The week following, I was busy, so I just didn't really have time. It's the same for Mortal Kombat 9. Well, I thought I would still cover L.A Noire, mainly because I'm sitting here, I'm looking at all these reviews, and there's a lot of 10 out of 10 scores and perfect scores, and claims that it's like the greatest thing ever. Personally, no. I don't think it's a perfect game ever. It's a good game, but not what the scores are really telling you for the most part. Now, I'm going to talk about the criticisms that I have of it firstly. First off, the combat. The combat feels very rigid. It feels very almost tank-like, the movement when you aim down the sight of the gun. Very tank-like. And there's not really a huge range of combat. There's normally just either run and gun, which does lack a bit of polish in this, because some of the enemy animations also look a bit odd. And the cover system. The cover system is very, very clunky. I mean, you look at games such as Gears of War, which is obviously, in my opinion, the pinnacle of a cover-based shooter, and even Mass Effect 2, they had a pretty good cover system. You look at them, and the cover systems are very good, they're very solid, they flow well, they fit into the gameplay. L.A Noire's, not so much. Sometimes Cole will have trouble getting into cover, sometimes he'll stick to a wall, and sometimes it just seems unresponsive. It's not a massive issue, because L.A Noire isn't a combat heavy game, but a lot of the street crimes do involve a shootout, and therefore you have to use the weapons and you have to use the cover system. And when you use these, obviously, in my opinion, I've seen these flaws. The cover system, very rigid, there we go, as does the gunplay. Other criticisms that I have: the facial animation is exquisite. I'm going to say that it's very, very good. It's better than Heavy Rain, which is quite surprising because Heavy Rain is a game I hold in very high esteem. But like I said, the facial animation in L.A Noire is absolutely fantastic. That being said, the facial details do lack a little bit. It almost seems like they got the animations done and thought, right, we'll just do a quick job on the detail. Some people's faces just look a bit void and almost mannequin-like, which is a little bit disappointing. You don't see this a whole lot, but it's only in like certain cases. I can't remember any off the top of my head, but there is some cases where some of the NPCs just seem a little less detailed and worked on. It's just kind of disappointing, and it does kind of draw away from the story of that particular case. Other issues with the cases, in my opinion, is there isn't a whole lot of room for expression within yourself. I mean, when you're questioning people, you only get 3 options. I'm not keen on that. It feels a bit like a mini game. So you got your lie, your doubt, and your truth. And obviously, if you press lie, you got to prove it with evidence, which you find. I'll talk about later. But it does actually feel a bit like a mini game. And if it was up to me, I would prefer something like multiple conversation choices. Again, I'm trying to think. Most recently to Mass Effect 2. Many choices, and through them choices that you branch off into, that's how you do investigation, instead of just the 3-button press, which is kind of a little bit lame in my opinion. It does, again, I think this might be down to personal preference, but I don't really like the idea of just having 3 options to do my investigation. The investigations themselves, walking around the rooms and looking at the items, it all is quite reminding me of point and click games that were popular in the late 80s, early 90s, mid 90s. And that's not a bad thing, but people have been saying that L.A Noire is this massively original title. Well, it's not really, in my opinion, and I'll look at it, the investigation especially is very much point and click on the next level.
Thanks, Mr. McCall. You've been a big help.
Very, like, so, you know what I mean? 3D model moving around instead of just point and click in, and not much happening. It does it well, but personally, I would have preferred, again, a little bit more expression in it, a little bit more freedom, because it does kind of feel a bit linear. Now, the feeling of a linear gameplay actually goes over into the game itself. The world that L.A Noire is set in, it's nice, it's well detailed, for the most part,
Jacob Henry.
and it feels a little bit like a living world.
LAPD.
Not on the same
You're under
level
arrest for the
as,
murder of
let's
your wife,
say,
Celine Henry.
as much as I dislike the game, Grand Theft Auto 4,
Save the
but
dramatic.
it does feel like a living
Hell,
world.
pal, you got bigger
But
problems.
unfortunately, this living world feels quite
What the hell
hollow.
are you
There isn't
talking
a whole
about?
lot you can do in it other than
You
the
come in
story
here,
and the
you
street
tell me
crimes.
that
You can't really
Celine
interact
is-
with anything.
Take a
You can't
seat,
really
Mr.
explore
Henry.
any shops,
We're gonna have a look around.
any
We'll
shops or
talk.
anything like that.
Jesus.
It is a bit kind of
I'm
disappointment,
sorry.
and people haven't been really criticising this, which I find really confusing considering Mafia 2 kind of played the same card where it was a very linear gameplay storyline set in an open world, but the open world in Mafia 2 felt a little bit more realistic, it felt a little bit more engaging. However, people still criticise Mafia 2 because of that very same thing, that you couldn't really interact with the world as much as you could with other games, like everyone kept connected sandbox games to it. And I think it's a little bit unfair for people to criticise Mafia 2 for that, but not criticise L.A Noire for the very same reason. And you could, like I said, you could even argue that L.A Noire's world isn't as much of a real world or an engaging world than Mafia 2 was. It's again, it could be down to personal preference. This is just my opinion. I honestly think it's an unfair criticism that people would mark down Mafia 2 for that reason, but let L.A Noire slide. And again, the combat in Mafia 2 is a little bit better than L.A Noire, yet it still got criticised for the combat, and L.A Noire did not, from some pretty big people, and a lot of critics and gamers. I find it very, very odd and strangely fickle. Other criticisms. Some of the voice acting isn't as good as I would expect for such a story-driven game. For the most part, it's decent. It's very decent. Phelps, the guy who does Phelps, does a good job. Most of the supporting characters do well as the main characters, but there's a couple of times in some cases where the people just really do sound like they cannot be arsed. It feels very, very lifeless. And my next big major criticism would be the street crimes. The street crimes really are shallow in my opinion. They offer very little. You get a tiny little bit of story, about a minute of a cutscene, and all it will be is here's a guy, he's evil, or here's a guy, here's a girl doing a crime, and you either chase them, shoot them, or fire a shot in the air, or just rugby tackle them.
that she drinks, Jacob.
That's it. There's
Dogs
not
have
a whole
regular
lot
haunts, places they
of
can
range
relax.
within the street crimes, and a lot of them really do feel and play out the same way. I mean, sometimes you could be chasing, you could be like just bombing around, and let's say for an hour you're just chilling around, and you keep trying to answer the street crimes, and you can have like 3 or 4 which is simply just chase a guy, and that's it. You just chase a guy up some streets or something, and that's your street crime.
When did you last see your wife,
It
Mr.
really doesn't feel very well developed.
Last
It almost
night.
feels like afterthought, like shit,
I went to see
replay
her.
value,
We talked.
throw this in, boom. And again, people
little out
haven't
of
really
hand.
criticised this, and I've got no
I
idea
left.
why. Absolutely no idea why. I honestly think that because of what's on the front, Rockstar didn't develop the game,
You don't
but
remember
the
what
Rockstar
time you
logo
last
is
saw your
still
wife or
present
not?
on the cover, and
Look.
Rockstar Presents. And
Sorry.
I honestly believe that people just
left.
seem to rim Rockstar's arse and
9 p.m.
turn a blind eye to all the criticisms.
Might have been a little
Hence where
later.
games like Grand Theft Auto 4 got such high ratings and Red
Right
Dead
around
Redemption
9.
got such high ratings, yet there was still quite a lot of issues in them. That being said, L.A. Noire,
Why did you kill her, Jacob?
enjoyable
Makes it a
game.
little better if you come clean about
There
it.
is a lot to be had
That's a
there.
thing to say.
The story is quite enjoyable, what I've played
I
so
never
far. I haven't finished it all, so I can't really fully comment
Gave
on
up
it.
my wife.
It looks quite decent. I'm not going to say it looks beautiful, because that'd be a bit of a lie. Facial animation really is top notch. It does add a slight twist on the gameplay,
went to her
but I
house,
honestly
you
don't
fought,
think it's
you
as
beat
heavy
her,
as many
she
people
left
make
and then
out,
you followed her.
because normally it's either just 3 animations
I
of some
left
guy looking
first.
away
He
means
tried to
he's
batter me with a
lying,
frying
or some
pan.
person with shifty eyes
I
means they're doubting,
Had to slap her
or
down.
some person looking straight at you, very confident, means the
Understandable.
truth. And yeah, the investigation angle, it is quite entertaining, it is quite engrossing at times. Some cases it kind of feels
So
a
you
little bit
can prove
lackluster,
that you came
but
back
for the
here after
majority
you left your
it does
wife's
actually do
place.
quite a good job.
I came
So
back
my
here,
overall
I was
like
here all
closing
night.
comments on L.A. Noire is
I
it's a
worked at
it's a good game.
6:30.
Trust us, it's a good game. You will have fun with it.
Nothing
You'll
going
enjoy
out
it.
tight.
If you enjoy story-driven games, you'll enjoy it quite a bit. However, I honestly don't think it's the big groundbreaking game that some people are making out, the 10 out of 10 title. I honestly do not think it is. If you ask me, if I was to give it a rating out of 10, I would give it something like 8 out of 10, 8.5 out of push. And there isn't a whole lot of replay value in it unless you want to go back and get all the clues or the hidden newspapers or the
How you got fed up with your wife,
locations, if you want to get the locations. Some people will argue that there's a free roam mode which you can do all the street crimes in, but again, in a world that is completely empty of interactivity for the most part, and the street crimes which are kind of repetitive, and even more so with the street crimes that you do in the single player campaign, they will repeat on end when you go in the free room. So if you're trying to hunt that achievement down for doing the street crimes, prepare for some repetition. But yeah, L.A Noire, enjoyable game. It's not a perfect game. It's still very much fun. I'm not entirely sure I'm going to put my game as a year in 2011 so far. But yeah, that's L.A Noire. If you disagree, agree, or you want to be a fanboy and just rant on about how I don't understand the game or something like that, feel free, because I'm actually genuinely interested to see other people's point of view on this game. Because I honestly don't see how people have overlooked the flaws so heavily. So yeah, thanks for watching. Again, if you want to share your comments, your expressions on the game and whatnot, go for it, because I'm actually all ears. I am actually interested to see if this is down to personal preference or maybe I'm just being grumpy. Personally, I think I've made valid criticisms. So yeah, thanks for watching. I'll have to clump this on the end because I completely forgot about these criticisms. Right, the character of Cool. There isn't really any feel of a character development with him, and mainly because, I don't know, it just feels like you switch from different cases just randomly without any real connection, and it kind of cuts any sort of flow of real story. It's just kind of disappointment. I don't know, it's just weird. It kind of cuts the flow of a real story, just randomly cutting from case to case to case. I don't know. It does actually affect my enjoyment of the game, my sort of investment in the story. Other problems, the clue solving is a little bit too easy. I mean, it's a little bit too obvious, and I'm not too keen on how it goes fully on. I like the idea of it, it's all fleshed out well, but the actual linking up clues to the investigations is a little bit too simple. I've already said about the combat, I'm pretty sure. I've recorded this an hour after the original audio, I apologise, I should be more organised, but yeah, that's really the main issues, that the combat, the game actually really doesn't offer a whole lot in terms of variety. And that does actually quite affect the overall gameplay. It essentially breaks down to investigation, question, some sort of combat / chase, and wrap up. Another thing I completely forgot to mention about, which honestly I don't know how I did it, but it's one of my main gripes, is the difference between lie and doubt is quite misleading, because the way that the game set itself out to be, some of the characters, if you press doubt and you actually are pretty confident it's doubt, it usually turns out to be lie, but it makes no sense to why they lie about that. And I don't know, it's hard to explain, it really is hard to explain, but it just seems a little bit lacking common sense in some of them areas. I mean, you can apply too much common sense to something and it's the wrong answer, which really does frustrate me. But yeah, there were just some quick extra common like sort of criticisms. I don't know why I keep referring to L.A Noire as a game. It's more like a film, Heavy Rain style, it's more like a film, but I found myself being able more to invest in Heavy Rain than I did with L.A Noire. I'm not entirely sure why that is just yet. I'll have to replay both games side by side to see why. So anyway, this was just extra sort of criticisms that I completely forgot about. So yeah, again, share, comments, blah blah blah.